Hello and welcome to the One Take Show, a podcast where we celebrate incredible conversation with some fantastic people. In this episode, we are in conversation with Mr. Raghav Kumar Singh. Mr. Singh is a Deputy Manager at Law at State Bank of India. Previously, he has worked with some of the most celebrated government organizations like Oriental Bank of Commerce, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation and others. In this episode, we are going to talk about his experience with law and law school, and we will decode every question around legal career in banking sector. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions and feedbacks, make sure you reach out to me. I would absolutely love that. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, sir. Welcome to the One Take Show. What a pleasure to have you on my podcast. You're a senior from my university who I personally have looked up to, and all of the students who study in our university really love and look up to. I think this is a blissful moment, not just for me, but for every listener who will tune into this conversation to benefit from every aspect of the same. Thank you so much for taking time off your very busy schedule to sit down with me for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, Costa. First of all, let me congratulate you for coming up with this brilliant idea, because as a law student, when I was pursuing law, there was this huge void when we had to actually know about the experiences of the professionals. Now you have come up with this particular idea, and that too at this point of time when people are panicking because of the COVID situation. So this will give certain perspective to not only to the law student but to the professionals as well. So last time, however, I remember you in some moot court.
Yes,
you were brilliantly, you were arguing brilliantly, and we were grilling you a lot. So I hope you do not reciprocate the grilling. You only remember the marks that we gave you, which helped you to proceed in the moot court competition.
No, so it was, although I would not say that I really loved the grilling. It was a very difficult moment for me, but honestly, I would not trade that for anything else. Extremely learning experiences that I've had with you. In this conversation, I think we will cover all of that. Beginning with my first question, heads up, is that you've had I'm really curious about your journey with RML, and more so curious about the fact that you've been inspired to do law and you've taken a very interesting trajectory in your career. What was that inspiration? What inspired you to move ahead with law? And what was your experiences in your law school that somehow shaped your perspective about your career?
Okay, so to begin with, what was my inspiration? It was my father. I belong from a judicial family. My father is a judge currently. So from the very beginning, I have been in that sort of an environment where I have seen how the law works. And I was obviously inspired by the very fact of being a lawyer or being a judge, for example. So I had my mind clear from the very beginning, from 6th or 7th standard. I was clear with this particular thing that I have to pursue law. And obviously, entering law school, I came from a small town called Riva. So I was fascinated with everything that law school had to offer, be it tangible or intangible, be it the infrastructure, be it this huge library, be it the moot court hall, particularly of RML. Like it's magnum opus. Once you enter into it and you see and you realize that maybe at some point of time you will be arguing there. So I was fascinated with everything that law school had to offer. And I guess it was because of that fascination of law, I actually worked towards being a lawyer. And when I entered into law school, my journey, it was fantastic. And in the very beginning, I would like to say that once you enter into a law school, there are a lot of insecurities which sweep in. For example, if you are coming from a small town, you will get a cultural shock. Like you are there you are studying in a small school, and then you enter into law school and you see people from all backgrounds coming there. There are people who are speaking fluent English. And then at that point of time, maybe you realize whether I should open my mouth in front of these people or not, whether I am capable enough of actually participating in the competitions, whether I'm worthy enough to be in this particular place where these highly talented individuals are there. So however, I had this idea that I would be utilizing each and every bit of what law school has to offer, because how I looked at law school at that point of time, and what I believe every student should look at law school, it is about that experience. You are going there for 5 years to gain an experience. It's not that, I have seen this mindset in many students, that they have this mindset that I want to become a judge, so I have to prepare for judiciary. So for me, there is no need to participate in a moot court. There is no need to participate in a debate or a mediation competition. I'll only be concentrating on my academics.
Right.
I think that's a flawed mindset, because the very purpose of entering into a law school is not to cram provisions, but to develop a personality, to develop a character. And you develop a character when you take up challenges, when you go through setbacks and you ease those setbacks. And that can only be done if you participate in competitions. So because you yourself are an avid mooter, you would understand that if you participate in a competition, it's like a small world. When there is a moot problem which is given in front of you, that becomes your life. Like each and every argument that you have to make in front of the judge, that is the happiness, if you are able to convince the judge. So these things will help us in future as well. So I was there with the mindset. I knew that maybe I am not good, but I had this criteria when I was in law school, that I don't have to be good, I have to be good enough. Just I have to be good enough to compete. That's it. And I still believe in this theory that you learn the most when you are there in the process.
Perfect.
You can think about moot court, you can think about mediation, you can think about writing an article, but until and unless you are there in the process, you are competing, you are actually making an attempt to write an article, you won't get it. You won't be able to understand the challenges which are there. So I did that. I did from the very first semester. I participated in moot court. I participated in all sort of competition, irrespective of the fact what the result would be. And I think that has helped me immensely in gaining those sort of experiences. And I would recommend this for all the law students, because you are there for the experience. You need to experience that law school. After 5 years, it is that experience which is going to help you in your career as well.
Perfect. I just have one follow-up question. So I think a lot of students who come from smaller backgrounds, although you have in a way answered this question already, just to be more specific about that, who come from smaller background and face these situations, perhaps with respect to English fluency or having that cultural differences or the situational differences, what would be in like sort of those pointers that you would like to give to that specific student as to how now, since you have a different perspective, a much more mature and different perspective now, how do you look back and give that one particular student those pointers, as in keep these things in mind, life will be easier for you?
Okay, so if you're coming from a small background where you are having language issues, you might not be a great orator, and when you look at someone and you feel, you should not belittle yourself. You need to remember that 5 years is a very long period. It's half a decade. The only competition that you need to have is yourself. You might have a benchmark that, okay, this person is brilliant when it comes to oratory. You might admire that person, but you should not be intimidated. You should not belittle yourself, because everyone comes from a different background. And what I used to believe, that the fact that this person is such a brilliant orator, this person is so good it might be good in debating, mooting. The fact is that I am also at the same place and the other person is also at the same place. So the fact that I'm worthy to be at the same place where this person is, that will motivate, that would inspire me to work towards that particular goal. And I said that you have to be, you can have benchmarks. You should try that, okay, one day I might come to this person's level when it comes to debating, mooting, publication, whatever it might be. But you should never be intimidated. You should always try to compete with yourself. How I looked that when I participated in my first moot court or debate or when I wrote my first article, I just stated to myself that, okay, I want to enter into this process. I want to experience, let me setbacks. I'm ready for those setbacks. What will actually happen? the most that could happen is I could fail. But that fear of failure should not, you should not take it by heart. You should remember that 5 years is a very long period. It will take time, and you should not have unreasonable expectations. You should not believe that, or you should not have this expectation that maybe tomorrow I'll compete with this person and maybe I'll be. No, because that is not going to happen. The person is coming from a background where he has participated in maybe 20 or 30 of months. Maybe he was an avid debater when he was in law he was in his school. You were not there. That kind of environment was not given to you, but now that environment is there. So you have to compete with yourself. That is what I believe. Then gradually you will improve, and maybe at some point of time you will hit that benchmark.
Perfect. I think this is the kind of mindset that will transform anyone's life, not just the people who come from such smaller backgrounds or perhaps from smaller cities, but even people who might be privileged need to have this mindset to further grow and exploit on their privilege, so as to say. This brings me to a rather interesting conversation, sir. One of the most inspiring factors that I see in your profile is that you're working in a very different sphere. What exactly? So before I don't think I can do any justice to the kind of profile and the work that you're doing right now. So I think my listeners would love to listen from you and thoroughly understand what exactly it is. So what is your profile currently, and how did you reach that profile and create that work profile for yourself?
Okay, so currently I work as a law officer. Presently, my post is Deputy Manager Law for State Bank of India, Administrative Office, Bhopal. So, would you like to first? Would you like me to tell how I reached there? Okay. So, basically, in 2000, I graduated in 2012. I got placement in Mumbai in a corporate in-house, and I worked there for around 6 or 7 months. And very quickly, I realized that this is not where I see myself in 5 years. So, that's a very relevant question. Firstly, when this was the question was asked in the interview, do you see yourself in 5 years in this particular company? I answered that yes, I do. But when I worked there, I realized that no, this is not for me. So I worked there for around 7 months. I quit my job, and then I realized that there is no sense of contribution, and I do not feel motivated enough to work here. So I took a year off. I started preparing for the government jobs, and while I was preparing, I have given various competitions, and then I got selected as a law officer in Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. Then I cleared IBPS, which is again law officer exam for all the public sector banks apart from SBI. And then I got through State Bank of India Skill 2 law officer. So the work profile of being a law officer is that you are actually acting as a manager for the branches which comes under your administrative office or zonal office. For example, in my zonal office, there are around 180 branches. So for 180 branches, there is one law officer. He will take care of all the issues which branch might come across, which relates to managing the litigation of the branches, which when I talk about litigation, it includes arbitration as well. So the profile is such that it's so diverse that you might have to attend a hearing which is taking place in a local regional labor commissioner's office, and you might have to attend a hearing which takes place, an arbitration proceeding which takes place before the Ministry of Finance. So it's a very diverse. Yes, it's a very diverse profile, a very enriching experience. So you have to, first of all, you have to deal with all sort of cases. You have to vet the replies which are being filed on behalf of the bank. Then you have to deal with the legal references. For example, branch has to give a loan. Branch has to go for finance. The property which the branch would be taking as a collateral, there is some problem in the chain of title. So they would refer it to the law officer that there is a will involved in the chain of title, and we believe that will is not probated. Can we go forward with taking that property for an equitable mortgage? Then there might be issues relating to disease settlement. There might be issues relating to RTI. Anything under the sun relating to legal issue for bankers that you have to deal with. So this is basically what my profile is. So it's a very diverse work. I enjoy, yes, because you need to learn something new when you are dealing with such sort of things. You have to draft documents as well. When there are complex loan agreements, you have to vet those agreements. So basically that is it.
Right, sir. And I think this sounds extremely fascinating. As a matter of fact, as a law student, when I look at this sphere of work and this entire industry, I see a possibility, a huge chunk of possibilities, which is perhaps not being talked about enough. So my first question to you as a follow-up is, you talk about switching from in-house corporation to banks and working specifically in that sector. What was your experience with in-house, and what exactly can you describe as the reasons that motivated you to transfer from in-house to the work profile that you have right now? A very quick question before we can move on to the other substantial ones.
So I was where I was working. I was looking after contracts, basically contract drafting, contract abstraction. So I found it very monotonous. So it did not. That's a very niche area, but still, it did not. I did not find that motivation to work there. So because it was about contract drafting, only one specific area was there. So I wanted something where I can develop a skill set which is diverse. So therefore I decided to quit that job, and I moved towards banking because first of all, banking is very diverse when it comes to various aspects, and secondly, this is very personal because I wanted to work in a government sector. I decided there itself because there was no sense of contribution for me. For example, you might ask this question that how do you get sense of contribution while working in a bank? So it's in a public sector bank, whatever work you are doing, at the end of the day, it will have some impact on the public. For example, if there is a loan referral to you where there is a security, there is some fault in that, or there might be some problem in the security. So while giving a legal opinion, and that legal opinion is such which does not allow the bank to go forward with that particular loan, which might go bad or NPA after a point of time, you are helping the bank to save that NPA at a later stage.
Right.
There might be a very small reference with regards to disease claim. A person is having an account and the person has died. Now that amount has to go to the family members. How that amount will go? There is some legal issue. If you are able to solve that legal issue, you are helping one family to get that amount expeditiously, which will save them the cost of litigation, which will save them the cost of the effort that they'll be making, the time. So there in very small things also that I find this sense of contribution. So that is why I moved from corporate to bank. And there is work-life balance as well. There is some sense of recognition as well. Working in SBI is absolutely great. People would recognize you instantly. They might be able to relate to you. These were the major factors which led me to come to bank.
Absolutely inspiring. I think this is opening me up to a huge new possibility of thinking about a career option. You mentioned the examination for public sector banks for law officers. What was your experience with that examination, and also with your stint with the SBI, and how exactly you got in? And what were your preparation strategies, if you can suggest something for our listeners?
Right. So when I was preparing for, so firstly for 1.5 years, I was working with Oriental Bank of Commerce. Now it is merged with Punjab National Bank. So there are basically two sort of exams. First one is for IBPS, that is basically scale 1 law officer entry level exam. They are basically called assistant managers. So for there is no experience needed for law officer exam. You just graduate and you can appear for that particular exam. So basically the pattern is that there are basically 4 sections. Now it is conducted in 2 phases. First one is the pre-phase, second one is the mains, third one is the interview. So for pre, there is English, reasoning, and GK. These 3 GS with respect to banking, and it is only qualifying in nature. You just need to have a qualifying pre. It's just qualifying in nature. Merit won't be prepared on that. And second one is law. And in law, there would be question basically on financial aspects of law. There would be more questions on SARFAESI Act, Recovery of Debt Due to Bank and Financial Institution Act, Real Estate Regulation Act and Contract, Indian Partnership Act. So merit would be based on the second paper, that is law. And SBI, the trend in SBI is that for the past 7 years, they have been recruiting directly for Scale 2. When it comes to Scale 2, they asked for experience. When I appeared at that point of time, they only sought experience of 2 years. Now they, for Scale 2, as per the recent notification, there is experience for 4 years. They want experience for 4 years. So basically, as an advocate or as a law officer, you need to have an experience of 4 years, and basically the pattern is same. So for those people who are interested to appear in these exams, I would recommend being in a law school for 5 years. Reasoning would always be an issue. You might be good in English, you might be good in GK as well, because you might be going through newspapers and all, but reasoning would be a problem. So clearing the cutoff of reasoning, one needs to give a little bit more time for reasoning. I guess if you gave around even half an hour for 1 month or 2 months, that would be it, because cutoff would be like, if there is 50 questions for reasoning, cutoff would be around 15. It's not that much. So reasoning is one thing which one has to emphasize on. And when it comes to mains, then obviously those acts which are having financial implications on bank, those acts you need to. So basically that was my strategy, since I was in a bank and I was dealing with all these cases, all these laws basically. So it was pretty convenient for me to, when I appeared for SBI, to get. And then interview is only 20% weightage is there for the interview. So if you have scored well in mains, it won't be.
Right. And with respect to who can appear for this examination, as you just mentioned, fresh law graduates can appear for this, for advocates can also appear for this. Is this, so when you talk about people who are trying to get into this industry, who are trying to make it into these examinations, should they have a certain background? Should they have, for example, people suggest you should have a background with CS, or perhaps you should have a commercial background, you should be strong with banking laws, or you should have taken that specialization in your law school. Is that necessary?
It's not necessary. However, it will help you. It will obviously help you if you are having an added qualification in while working. It will help you. For example, I'll talk about SBI specifically. SBI is having a lot of branches. There are certain branches. There are like zonal offices. Then there is altogether a different vertical. Like mid-corporate vertical is there. So we'll be having law officers for administrative offices, zonal offices where there is general banking taking place. Then there will be these huge corporate offices where financing would be minimum they'll start from like 500 crores. So they'll have law officers there also. If you want to work there, then they would obviously look at your background. If you are having CS, then they would generally post those law officers there, and they will have this very niche kind of area where they'll work, where it will relate to documentation and project finance, project tie-up. So yes, it's not necessary, but obviously it will help you while you proceed further in the career.
Right. And now my question escalates to a second level, where the aspirants who have either taken the examination or are preparing for the examination, and they want to make it in this industry, make it big in this industry, they want to start strong. So with this mentality, what are the essential set of skills that you suggest for these aspirants to have so that they can perform better? Essential set of skills like perhaps punctuality, not just exactly punctuality, but hard work, as in also networking, anything of that sort, anything that can help.
Right. So I'll start with law student. If you are a law student and you are already pursuing and you want to end up in a banking sector or in-house, there are certain basic things that you need to know. You should be good in drafting. First of all, drafting is something which will help you everywhere, be it litigation, be it in-house, be it bank. So one should be good in drafting. One should have clarity when it comes to law, and that to basic subjects. You need to, for example, I'll say that around 40% of the references which we get, more or less relating to mortgage. So I don't know, but when you are going through Transfer of Property Act, So mortgage, that one area where, we'll just cram that particular section and we'll realize that, okay, this is simple mortgage, this is equitable mortgage, English mortgage, that's it. When I realized this thing when I entered bank, because it's complex, it's not that easy. So you need to have clarity on those laws. Basically, for example, you need to have clarity on transfer of property act. You need to have clarity on Indian Contract Act, because you'll be needing vet agreements, and these might be complex agreements. These might be joint venture agreement. These might be project tie-up agreements. So you need to have that particular clarity. Then there are certain acts which might not be taught in a law school. For example, Indian Stamp Act. Now that's a very relevant piece of, I think that legislation is there, which I don't think so many law schools teach all these legislation. So you need to have a fair bit of idea about that as well. So basically, legislations, when it comes to legislation, you should have clarity on these legislations. Secondly, you should be good in drafting. Thirdly, I believe that when you enter into a law school, you do not enter into a law school for cramming provision. You enter to know how you interpret a provision. Because when I was there, I graduated in 2012. So at that point of time, there was no IBC, right? There was no RERA. Yeah. Now, when I sit as a law officer, there is some reference which is relating to RERA, which is relating to IBC. I have to read that particular law there itself and I have to interpret it. So it is very important that when you go through that particular law, you analyze that how that teacher is teaching you to interpret that provision. That may be anything. If I recall my classes from law school, I can vividly recall two teachers. One is Askan Pandey sir, and other one is Manveen sir. Each and every provision when they used to teach, in fact Kundu sir as well, each and every provision that they used to teach, it would take them even 2 classes for a single provision, because they did not teach us what the implication of that provision is, but how do we need to read that particular comma. We need to read what is the difference between purposive interpretation and what is the difference between mischief rule of interpretation. All these things are very important. So I think these are very basic things which will help you in all the provision, on all the sectors, be it litigation, be it banking. So this is pretty much it. You need to have that idea how you'll go through, how you'll read that provision, because most of the time it will come to interpretation. That builder might be saying that this is the interpretation that the bank is not accepting, and the bankers might be saying, or the bank law officer might be saying that no, this is the interpretation. So basically it comes down to interpretation.
Perfect. I think this part of the conversation, this section of the conversation is absolutely necessary. I will particularly share this section separately also, so that more and more law students can actually come across this conversation. My last set of questions for you is that when you entered this industry were there some challenges that you faced that we should look out for, and how did you overcome them? Any such major hurdle that you faced?
Yes. When you enter into a bank as a law officer, so say banking is very, very technical. It's not something like it's a piece of cake. It's not like that. So in order, first of all, in order to understand those provisions, in order to understand even references that what this person is saying or what the branch is actually asking, you need to understand. For example, they will come to you and they'll just throw you with a reference stating that there is one current account and that a current account has been freezed and the person has challenged this order in the NCLT. Now the person come up with the order of NCLT. Kindly suggest us or kindly give your opinion whether we can defreeze that particular account as well. So the moment you enter, you might know how current account works, how saving bank account works, what is STDR. All these terms are there. So this is the most challenging part while working in a bank, that you need to have a basic technical know-how about what these things mean, because unless you know how does it work, you might not be able to give a full-fledged and comprehensive opinion about it. So when when say someone decides that okay, I'll be going into the banking sector, then I believe that they should have fair bit of understanding about banking terms, about banking terminology, as well as these products which the bank is offering. So because most of the times you might be having a very clear understanding of what law is, but you might not be aware about the product, you might not be aware about the systems and procedures which are being followed in the bank. And that is the gap, and that is the void that we need to fill, and that can only be filled while you are, as I said, that while you are there in the process, you learn. So
Right.
it's not important that you know each and everything from the word go when you enter into the bank, but we need to update our knowledge every day. This is one major challenge that, like most of my peers also, they face this thing, because as you know, banking, I think when I was in RML, banking was there only in one semester, that's it. And RC Cooper case was, I think, every one of us knew that this is one case that we need to prepare. That was pretty much it. So that's one challenge I think we all need to prepare ourselves for when we enter into this. Apart from that, say there will be, for example, if you are dealing with a client, and that's a pretty huge loan. For example, there's a project tie-up and there's a project finance. So they will come up with their own legal team. They will come up with their own, say, in-house counsels, and they will try to convince that the void which is there, that void is not existing at all. So at that point of time, we need to be prepared. We need to know what the law is. And these are very small things. These can be that there might be a void relating to Stamp Act. There might be a void relating to drafting. So the important part is, how do you convince the other person? That skill. And how do you convince your boss? That is also because, look, since you are not working in a law firm, you are working in a banking sector, and the people who are there, those people are generalists. They are not from law backgrounds. So the most challenging part is that if you have to tell that this is the problem, first of all, you need to convince them that this is the problem, because since it is a bank, so they will, everyone, it's very obvious. If I'm a banker, I want to give that loan because that business is coming to the bank. So if you have to say that, if you have to tell them that this is the problem which is existing, you should be clear about it. You cannot use legal maxims. You cannot use very complex terms. You have to tell them in very common words that this is the problem which is existing, and that is why we should not go forward with this loan. And at the same time, you need to provide the solution. What most of us think, that as a law officer, our work is to tell that, look, this is the problem. No, this is the problem that is there, but how do you solve it?
Solution. Yeah.
You have to provide a solution. Whether the other party adopts that solution, that is their prerogative. You do not have to worry about it, but at the same time, you have to provide a solution. So I think striking a balance between this is, again, a challenging aspect. So these are basically, I guess, these are things where we need to brush ourselves.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think this is a conversation that was absolutely necessary, and was a conversation that was missing from the One Take show. Every listener of mine who pushes me to explore the conversations that are going to open gates of opportunities will love this conversation. I will be looking back at every aspect of this video and making notes of my own, so that I can improve on myself and perhaps look for opportunities in this area. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule and taking time off for my podcast. Do you have any closing remarks for our listeners?
Thank you so much, Kaustubh. It was fun, and especially talking to you after that moot court session. So I did not expect this, first of all, and it went pretty well. You did not grill me at all. So first of all, thank you for that. Secondly, I understand that this is a very challenging time for all the law students. They'll be having all these apprehensions that what will happen after a year, when all these things are all this particular this pandemic is over, or maybe there will be jobs or not. And so this is a very, very crucial time, and this is a very important time for everyone to realize that the only thing that they can do at this point of time is to improve their skill sets. That is, I guess, that is the only option that anyone is having. They should realize, everyone should realize that things, it's a phase. Hopefully it's a phase, and this thing is going to end, and when this thing ends, the only thing which will help them is their skill sets. So let us all have that self belief in us, which should keep us going. And I believe all of us should have that positive frame of mind, and that's it, I think. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. What a conversation! I think I've been looking forward to a conversation that is so engaging and that is so enriching in every aspect. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, and thank you so much for taking time out for the One Take Show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Kaustav. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.